Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about American Pie. And this movie came out in 1999, arguably the best year for movies of all time, depending on who you ask, possibly. But lots of great movies came out this year, and this was also one of them. And I enjoyed this movie. I've seen this movie once before, like 5 years ago, and I don't know, I kind of hated it. I just didn't really gel with the humor. I just found it to be like any random, just, oh, the jokes are just sex jokes, and they were just very annoying, and I just couldn't get into it. But rewatching it all these years later, I do feel as though there's more to it than just that. There are some parts of this movie that I do feel don't work all that well. But as a whole, I did enjoy the film, and I wasn't upset by the end of it. I did find the movie to be pretty funny throughout most of it, and I think the characters are also well defined in this movie. And there were some fun ideas sprinkled throughout the movie, and easily, like, the most memorable scene for me is the webcam scene in the middle of the movie. That was pretty funny, and it goes on for a long time. And there's some funny ideas sprinkled in there as well, like the Bible is also pretty funny. And when it comes to the romance, because this movie is also trying to be somewhat of a romantic comedy, although it's more comedy than romance. I wouldn't call it a rom-com. I would just say it's a comedy with romance in it, because in my mind, that's more or less what it is, or it just accurately represents what I think of this movie. Comedy first, and then some romance in there, and I do feel as though the romance was well handled, although I did prefer it in the second half than the first half, and I feel as though that's probably my biggest issue is that the first half I didn't really get a whole lot out of, and it did get kind of repetitive. But then the second half happened, and I was more with it, and things were happening that I kind of cared about, and there was something to latch on to in there, and I enjoyed it a bit more for what it was offering. And also, having seen the movie once already, I could see certain things coming already, and how things were being set up, and that was kind of fun for me in terms of my own personal experience. And this movie was a nice time capsule. Like, the characters never once felt like the writer just talking with themselves or anything like that. They felt like dumb high schoolers who are just trying to get laid, and that was kind of fun, and just watching that unravel is pretty entertaining for me. The dad character in this movie I also found to be pretty funny, and he's not in the movie a whole lot, but him being there does add an extra layer of comedy in the movie for me. And in terms of issues that I have with the movie, there was one scene involving a pie, which, don't get me wrong, it was still funny, but I do feel as though it was kind of somewhat unnecessary, and there was one plot hole in the movie that really bugged me. And it was kind of funny to think about, but all I kept thinking is, why are you doing this in the kitchen and not somewhere else? Like, we got a pretty funny shot, but that's about it. And I get the character's an idiot, but I don't know. If I were in that situation, I would just go in a bathroom or my own room to do something like that. And despite this movie being 90 minutes long, there were still some points where it was dragging for me. And I just wish that things moved along a bit quicker. And there's almost like no plot to this movie, really. And there's also a lot of characters in this film. And I do feel as though there are a few too many characters to keep track of. And I do feel as though they could have cut some of them out to have a story that flows a bit better, in my opinion. Because it did feel like, oh, there's a lot of characters, a lot of storylines going on, but we only have 90 minutes to flesh all these things out. Some things just don't get enough screen time, in my opinion. Whereas something like, I don't know, Magnolia or American Beauty actually develops these characters thoroughly from memory and gives you a reason to care or be invested. And this one, it has a lot of things going on. I just didn't feel as though this many characters was overall justified. And in terms of framing and cinematography, there wasn't really much to write home about except for a couple shots that I kind of liked. And they were a bit different and stood out, but aside from that, there wasn't really much that stood out to me in terms of how the movie was presented visually. And this might also have to do with the fact that this is, and I'm going to mispronounce this as always, whenever I try to pronounce names I'm not familiar with. Paul Weitz. This was his first feature film, and I do think it's a great first feature. Don't get me wrong. However, I will say that that might be like the director figuring out how to present things visually and like coming up with a style. So that might be the remnant of something. Maybe not. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that was kind of my takeaway. It was like, oh, it's a first feature film, and some things you can kind of forgive, and like little things being rough around the edges, like that might just be the result of it being a first feature film. And this movie was fairly successful. It had an $11 million budget, and it grossed $230 million worldwide. And I'm not sure if that's adjusted for inflation or not, but that's pretty good. And I remember in the 90s, something like that, for even a big budget movie, was like a hit. Crazy to think how big budgets are now compared to then. And that's about all I have to say about American Pie. I really enjoyed it this time watching it. I remember kind of somewhat my experience the first time watching it, and I just didn't really get anything out of it on my first watch. I might have been in the wrong mood or had false expectations or something. I have no idea. But I think the first time I watched it, I rated it like a 3 out of 10. But this time, I enjoyed it a lot more, kind of like how I did with Black Christmas. When I rewatched that movie, I wound up enjoying it a lot more and bumped my rating from a 3 to a 6 for the original Black Christmas, and that's pretty much how I feel with this movie. Not saying I'm trying to keep a pattern, that's how I genuinely feel after rewatching this movie. So definitely check this movie out whenever you get the chance. It's currently on Netflix, so if you want a place to stream it, that's a great place to do so. And with all that being said, I'm going to give American Pie a 6 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos as always. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below your thought of American Pie, and my social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for, you guessed it, American Pie 2. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.